how attacks have been launched on civilians on a massive scale. There are tanks in the Sudanese capital. Airstrikes are being launched every day in the capital. Hundreds have been killed, thousands have been injured, thousands others have been forced to flee. People's homes are being raided and looted. The humanitarian crisis, as our guest from Sudan just told us, is worsening by the day. And then when we talk about the impact this has on India, the Prime Minister today chaired a high-level meeting. At least 3,000 Indians, we are told, are trapped in Sudan at the moment. And the External Affairs Minister has made it abundantly clear, till there is a ceasefire in place, till you have a safe corridor being created, people cannot even leave their homes. As somebody who served as India's ambassador to that country, so if you could explain to us the topography of the region and how difficult you believe it's going to be this time around for India to carry out evacuation operations to rescue stranded Indians from Sudan.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be on your amazing channel along with my colleague, General Siwach, whose knowledge is far superior to mine. And I've just heard what our friend, the journalist, who obviously is from the south of Sudan, but based in Khartoum, was telling us. It was my longest stint as ambassador, a country that I grew to love dearly. First of all, to answer your question about civil war, Sudan is no stranger to civil war. It became independent on the 1st of January 1956. Civil war had already started. It continued off and on for 50 years, ended with a comprehensive peace agreement that gave South Sudan, the Kafirs, the African Kafirs of the South, the right to secede through a plebiscite. They did secede. Why did the Sudanese government agree to that? Because their back had been broken, their military was exhausted after 50 years of intermittent fighting, and a war had broken out in Darfur in Western Sudan. The Sudanese army couldn't fight the battle in Darfur, so they outsourced it to a bunch of criminals, crooks. The term is mawalis. They were told this is going to be a self-financing operation. You guys go around, do what you can, carry away the women, the children, whatever you can loot, that's yours. We are going to look the other way. At that point of time, ma'am, these people were known as the Janjaweed. Now, I'm a little surprised that you call them paramilitary forces. They are a bunch of unrepentant thugs. They are no paramilitary forces. They have no status in the present Sudanese constitution. There was some executive order saying that they are now going to be part of some kind of security setup, but that hasn't been ratified yet. So what happens is, ma'am, when there are all these atrocities in Darfur, the fellow commanding the Sudanese military there is a chap called Abdul Fattah al-Burhan, who is now the army chief and the head of the military government, and who commanded the Janjaweed, as they were known. Janjaweed means warrior on a horse, was a chap called Hameti. You just referred to him as General Hamdan Dagalo. The two of them combined to throw out Omar Hassan al-Bashir, the longtime dictator of Sudan, because protests had erupted against him. He was indicted for war crimes, crimes against humanity, all kinds of things in Darfur. They didn't want themselves to be involved with him. They didn't want their own names to be dragged into the controversy. So they dumped this fellow and they swore eternal loyalty to each other. I know both of them extremely well. I've met them several times. And then what happens? Then the fight begins over two things. One, the natural resources of Sudan. It has some oil. Most of the oil went when the South seceded in 2000. And about 80% went to the South. The rest remains with the government of Sudan, with the Republic of Sudan. More important, what happens to these hundreds of thousands of the what you call the rapid support forces? What will happen to them? Will they be absorbed into the regular Sudanese army? They tried that with the fellows in the south, the Sudan People's Liberation Army. Ma'am, there's a bunch of, forgive my tough language, there's a bunch of jokers sitting in New York who decided that they would form joint integrated units between the southern rebels and the Sudanese military. You've been fighting these guys for 50 years, and suddenly some chap sitting in New York says, get into bed together and say, I love you. It didn't work at all. The fighting continued till the secession came. The same thing is going to happen here, man. Who's going to control? Who's going to take the top positions in the military? That is the question. Both these guys are filthy rich. They want to control the resources of the country. Will a ceasefire come? I doubt it very much. The Americans tried thinking that they have some influence. They have probably -0. The British, even less than minus 100. They are not liked at all. You know that any European looking chap there is being shot at. Some ambassador was, his place was attacked, etc. There was a time some years ago when I was there was a bunch of rebels from Darfur who came all the way up to Khartoum, and at least a couple of Western ambassadors, no names, came running to my residence, which is very close to the airport, as was rightly pointed out, and sought refuge there. So, what happens now? Ma'am, there are a number of players who are involved in this. We are looking at the kind of situation that has devastated countries in the Middle East and Africa, from Lebanon and Syria to Libya, Ethiopia, Somalia. Khartoum used to be one of the safest cities in the world. It no longer is. And may I also tell you that I have lost a very close friend's son, one of over 400 killed. Broke my heart. Who surrounds Sudan? We have Libya, Chad, Central African Republic, Eritrea, and South Sudan, which seceded in 2011. All of them have their internal conflicts, various rebel groups operating, etc. And then we have the outsiders with their own interests. Now we are told that the Wagner group of Russia is getting involved, has supplied some missiles to the RSF, and with that they've shot down one or two aircraft belonging to the Sudanese military. Whether that is true or not, we don't know. But when I was there, 2005 to 2010, we were still talking about the Wagner Group. Russia is supposed to want a Red Sea port for its navy. Well, that is obviously true. United States and the European Union have imposed sanctions. They've imposed sanctions in the 90s. They declared Sudan a state sponsor of terrorism. All kinds of things happened because they had the Abu Nidal organization, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad. And later, by the way, a fellow whose house was very close to our residence, a chap called Osama, son of Laden, who was then subsequently, he went off to Afghanistan and so on. So what do we see coming? You've talked of civil war. It's not coming. It's there. Will there be a ceasefire? Very unlikely. If they haven't done it on Eid al-Fitr, it's not going to happen. What next, therefore, for Sudan? Ma'am, in the past, the Sudanese have gone through periods of great turmoil, but their robust affection for their country, Sudan, is apparent. Their warmth, their friendship, their support for outsiders, all this is very well known. So what I see happening is the two armed factions will exhaust themselves. The people will come onto the streets saying Sarah, the Arabic word for revolution. We saw that after the Arab Spring. That's going to happen. The people will descend to the streets. There'll be more deaths, but that is the only way that peace will come to this benighted nation.
All right. Ominous words there from you, Ambassador. A civil war is not coming. It's already there. Sorry about your loss, Ambassador. This is obviously a very difficult time for the people of Sudan. Like you rightly pointed out, there are just too many players and actors who are currently active in this current situation. And as always, it is really a war over resources. The question is what really happens next. We will come back to you, Ambassador, in a moment to talk about the India dimension to this story, the challenge that India faces as far as evacuating its nationals from the war-torn country is concerned. But let me first get a word in from Major General A.K. Siwach. Sir, whatever the claims and counterclaims by the two warring sides, fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, most people believe what's happening right now is a result of the personal rivalry between General Burhan and General Dagalo. This is all about who gets to control the armed forces of Sudan and the country itself. Given that there are so many actors involved, how do you see things panning out going ahead? There are many observers who are saying that there is a serious threat of this spilling out into the region. Today it is Sudan, tomorrow it could be Chad, Eritrea. And let's not forget that vested interests in the region are already active, whether it is Russia, whether it is the Wagner Group, or other mercenaries, perhaps.
Yeah, Neha, I couldn't hear your question completely, but I could make it out halfway through. Now, the question which comes is, what are our challenges as on today as far as India is concerned? Now, the first and foremost challenge is how do we evacuate these almost 3,000 Indians which are now stranded in Sudan. That is the biggest challenge. And the challenge has become very complex because the Khartoum, which is the capital, where there is a runway, the airfield is not operational. and hence it is very, very difficult for any aircraft to land there. That is point one. The second thing is there is a civil war type situation taking place. How do the people reach up to the airport or come to Indian embassy? Because the fight is taking place in the street between the military and the paramilitary rapid support force. Now the point is that both these varying groups are not ready to listen to anyone. So therefore, the point today is very important: is how to evacuate these about 3,000 Indians. So to me, it looks like as on today, staying where you are is the only solution till the time the situation slightly improve. Because the point is, the moment you venture outside, the possibility of your becoming casualties are higher. Because there is no one law and order, there is a total confusion, there is a civil war type situation prevailing. So there is a chances of you getting either killed or injured. Now, whether these Indians who are stranded there, do they have a wherewithal or a support system for which they can survive for days together? I suppose that is also a very important thing, that they must have something to stay put there. In the sense, they should have a support system in terms of food, rations, as well as some other liquid. So that is question which is becoming very important. Now, whom do we contact to evacuate them? There is no denying the fact we are contacting US, UK, Saudi Arabia, UAE, also United Nations. We are trying to speak to the both the parties, whether it is a military commander or basically rapid support force. But so far we have not able to succeed. The ceasefire which is being promised between both of them has not been successful. Now, this is a big, big challenge. Now, remember when we are having this meeting, there were two main players which were also in addition to the Prime Minister and the Minister of External Affairs and NSA, were the Chief of Air Staff as well Chief of Naval Staff. The Chief of Air Staff basically has to make a contingency plan to evacuate these people from by air, because we have a capability of also landing an aircraft on a advanced landing ground or a half complete runway. That is C-13J Hercules. We have that capability. We will try that in case it is feasible and possible. The second thing, to make it look like the naval chief was also there. Maybe they are thinking if they can evacuate them in case by air it is impossible. Is there any way that the evacuation can also be taken place by the means of the sea? If they can reach to the port and from there they can be evacuated. All this thing must have been worked out. They are trying. They are also in the same situation as what we are discussing. There is no easy solution to the problem today. The situation seemingly looks to be complex. We have done evacuation in past, but I think this is the most challenging and most complex, because there is no law and order. The situation on ground is so confusing that anyone taking chance to come out will become a casualty by itself. Now, this is a question number one, Neha, which you asked me. The another question come, what happened now? No, remember that this civil war situation now going out and spreading to other countries like Chad and Ethiopia are very high. And also the other actors and characters which are trying to make use of, whether it is Saudi, whether it is UAE, whether it is Russia, which is trying to now take a port there in the Red Sea, that is also very high. Wagner group coming into this, now trying to take its own pie of a flash, is again made the situation more complex, because Wagner group is a very notorious group which is now fighting from Russia side in Ukraine. So overall, the situation seemingly looks to be very, very complex. There doesn't seem to be very easy answer. It looks like that as of today, to evacuate our 3,000 Indians is an operation by itself. It is a complex operation. But
Yes.
the fact is that we have been successful so far in all the operation. I suppose Indians will be the first one to evacuate there. They are trying their best. They are trying to find out some workable solution. We have a capability and capacity to also land on a semi type of airfield which is damaged almost 50%. I suppose that is the way, Neha, we would have been trying, and we are trying to find out some solution but immediately doesn't seem to be any solution. The immediate solution seemingly looks to be stay where you are, stay safe, keep your support system available with you in terms of logistic and supply. Neha.